The meeting for the special budget meeting for October 20th, 2016 is called to order at 5:42 p.m. Roll call?
We want to do the pledge.
We don't do them for special,
Okay.
for hearings.
Oh, okay.
We'll do them.
Councilman Bodier is absent. Councilman Benton.
Present.
Councilman Hewitt.
Present.
Councilman Johnston.
Present.
Councilman Wheeler.
Present.
Mayor Maselli.
Present.
Police Chief Walker. Fire Chief St. Cyr.
Present.
City Attorney Beerus is absent. City CPA Linda Lulu.
Here.
And Nicole Lee.
I'd like to clarify for the record that Tim Bodier stated he will be here shortly, and Gilbert Burris will be here for the regular city council meeting. Ms. Lulu has a presentation for everyone about the budget in general for 2016. If you don't mind, I'll let her have the floor. Linda, do you have the microphone in front of you?
Yes.
Thank you, because you have a soft voice.
I try. Okay. First of all, I'd like to start by saying thank you to all of the hardworking employees of the city of Harahan. I've been here for 10 months, and I've gotten to know many of our first responders in both the fire and police departments, all of the department heads, and the employees who work in City Hall itself. It is apparent that all of the city's employees love what they do, and they love their city. Likewise, I wanted to thank everyone for working closely with me, including the city's other outside contractors, as we work together to bring the city's general ledger bookkeeping and budgetary processes to a better place. And we truly are in a better place than when I first arrived. I inherited a whiteboard the size of one wall of my office, covered with tasks that needed to be tackled. I promptly put up another whiteboard on the second wall, which I filled with tasks that I identified which needed to be handled. These tasks included things such as reviewing and refining policies, examining contracts, and renegotiating or putting out requests for proposals, implementing better filing systems, adhering to budget law requirements, and increasing the transparency of the city. I am proud to say that we have all worked hard and have accomplished many of these tasks, but of course additional tasks come to light as time is progressing. The city's biggest challenge was trying to function beneath the all-encompassing shadow of the deficit inherited. The inherited deficit from 2014 was $1,256,703. The mayor has stated her platform is to run a tight ship and to eradicate the deficit. I am proud to be able to report, according to the audited 2015 financials, there was a 76% decrease in the city's deficit, leaving a remaining deficit of $298,107. The original 2016 budget, adopted in May of this year, projected that this deficit was going to be decreased by another $63,000, leaving approximately $236,000 of a deficit left. Since then, however, the city has seen a vastly improved financial outlook. This allowed the city to refinance its 2006 bonds at a much lower interest rate, saving approximately $30,000 of interest in 2016, with even more savings over the remaining life of the loan. Additionally, the city was able to pay off its 2007 bond a year early, saving the city approximately $6,000 of interest. These two actions allowed the city to close the related sinking and reserve funds and transfer those monies into the general fund, further helping the city's bottom line. As I have repeatedly stated, a budget is a tool. It is a tool that is used to monitor the city's receipts and expenses, and this tool has been constantly monitored throughout the year. We are at the point in time when this tool has to be honed to reflect current expectations for the 2016 outcome. And these expectations are even better than what we had originally hoped. We are now projecting eradicating the budget in its entirety. Actual ending balance is projected to be a positive $517. Will we hit this ending balance of $517? No, because no line item actually matches to the penny what is projected. But we do believe that the deficit at year end will be close to the zero mark, leaving the city with an excellent position to build 2017 and future years on. Before discussing the details of 16, I would like to give a glimpse at our 17 projection. The mayor has told me that she wants to stay the course and keep the ship running tight. She wants to build up the city's reserves so that not only day-to-day operations can be met, but any bumps in the ocean can be weathered. She is willing to spend, but to continue to spend wisely. The mayor has been promising 4 things about the city. 1, to protect the safety and welfare of the citizens and the infrastructure and services of the city, which is what the residents deserve. 2, that the deficit would be eradicated. 3, that the first responders could have additional manpower. And 4, that pay raises would be given as the number of years since employees have had one has been too long. If these proposed 2016 amendments are passed, then the 2017 already provided to the council for review includes one additional employee for both the police and the
Ms.
fire
Lulu?
departments.
For the record, Councilman Bodier is now entered. Sorry we started a little bit.
No,
We
it's
can-
okay. Don't mind.
Thank you.
This leaves the city with a modest, positive fund balance of approximately $124,000 at the end of 17. Unfortunately, this is not enough to cover employee pay raises in 17, but we will continue to monitor and reevaluate during next year, and we remain hopeful for the 2018 year. Now to return to the proposed amendments for 16. The methodology used is consistent across all departments. We looked at what was spent or received through September and what the anticipated revenues and expenditures will be for the last quarter of this year. This is not the final budget for 16. We expect to bring a final budget amendment to you at year-end closing and another prior to the audit closure. This will keep any department from being negatively impacted with unexpected costs at year-end or audit-related entries. Looking at the budget before you, there are 3 columns. The first one, labeled Budget, is the original budget passed plus any budget amendments that had occurred thus far through ordinances. The second column, labeled Proposed Budget, is what we now believe the year-end numbers will be. And the third column, Proposed Amendment, is the difference between the original and the proposed columns. I have a brief synopsis prepared for each fund, and I propose we get the little funds out of the way first. The sales tax fund is on page 18. Since the city paid off the 2007 bond and refunded the 2006 bond, the city no longer has an obligation to have a percentage of the sales tax revenues diverted to the sinking fund. The changes here reflect these monies now being included in with the sales tax receipts on the sales tax fund. And on pages 21 and 22, the bond sinking and bond reserve funds, the changes here reflect the expenses associated with refunding and paying off the bonds and closing these accounts out. Page 19, the sewer fund. The proposed budget figures are the exact same ones included on Exhibit 11, which was provided to the council in the DEQ, which have been examined extensively during that process. Related are the 3 DEQ funds, the sinking, the reserve, and the contingency on pages 23 through 25. Of note on these 3, there was no original budget for 2016, as I was not aware of these funds' existence. They should have been opened upon signing the DEQ loan in December of 2013, but they were not opened until mid-2015 and not included on any of the audit reports. These funds were not properly funded until I did so several months ago during the review by the DEQ. The proposed figures were approved by the DEQ and the council last month. The capital projects fund.
Linda, I'm sorry,
Yes,
before
ma'am.
you move on the sewer fund, looks like line 40 and 42 under expenditures. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correct.
the page again.
I'm sorry, it's page 19 on sewer fund. Lines 40 and 42. It says engineering and accounting. So for instance, for engineering, looks like we didn't budget anything for 2016. So y'all are proposing an amendment to add 36,000 for that line?
Yes.
And where is that money coming from? Is that
The-
just at the general?
Well, the general, we operate in a pooled
Okay.
cash fund, so yes, the general fund transfers the money over here until next year when the sewer fund will be able to operate on its own.
Because I noticed in some of the other departments, and I guess we'll go through that, there's some engineering lines there too.
There's a, I think in the street department, there's engineering.
There was something non-departmental too, I think that hit engineering too.
That's traditionally where the engineering department expenses have been, but the bills are broken up by sewer and by street maintenance and
Because it
drainage.
just looks like we're giving 35 to engineering in this department, and then you move to another one, and there's an increase of like 13,000 in that department. So that's like another 40 or 50,000, and there's some other ones. I just want to, that brought my attention, and also the accounting. So we budgeted $1,000. It looks like it's projected that $16,624 would be spent in accounting. So technically, we're over budgeted in that line. We're
Correct,
also over budgeted in engineering. Because
Correct.
we didn't budget anything.
correct.
So what happens if the money is not moved and the line is overspent? Because I know there was some issue of back and forth of, is this a line item budget, or is it a general with a 5% tolerance in the department as a whole? I know we had talked about that before, and I just want to get clarification on that,
It is viewed as a 5%
like the 5% tolerance.
tolerance of total expenses by fund. So if the expenditures and the transfers out exceed 5% of what was the budget, and it's the final budget, so I mean, we can have 5 reiterations of the budget. So whatever the final one is at year end, when the auditors show up, that is what ends up being an audit finding on the report.
So you could technically be overspent in the line as long as you're not 5% in the department as a whole.
Correct.
Okay. So what's the purpose of a line item budget?
It's the
Is it the total or is it department?
It's the fund, not department, because the general fund's got a lot of departments.
Right.
It's the fund.
So it's,
Okay, so
it's,
it's a
as
fund.
long as our expenditures and revenue doesn't exceed 5%.
Right.
Okay. Because I guess I'm
And
just, again.
its revenues have to be under by 5% and expenditures over by 5%, not just a flat 5%.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I know there was just talk of, we have an ordinance that specifically calls for a line item budget, and there's several lines that are already overspent with the proposed amendment to reallocate funds to make those lines whole, which could ultimately make us exceed the 5% tolerance if the money's not moved. So that's why I was just,
Correct. If the money, I didn't tally up like the sewer fund,
okay.
but,
And this just was one, there's some other ones too, but they're similar. I have the same questions about some of the other lines too. But I was just making sure, I remembered us talking about it's 5% as a whole from expenditures to revenue. Okay. Okay.
let's see. Okay, also, next page. Page 20, the capital project fund. The decreases all relate to projects that are being moved to 2017, as the grant income in those projects by department will not begin until next year. It was risky to move forward with these projects in 2016, as there was a very real possibility of the city defaulting on the DEQ loan, which then would have necessitated utilizing all available funds, including this capital account. You will notice that there is a new city IT department listed here. This will predominantly come into play during 2017. The city is vastly behind with regards to technology. Smaller entities have IT departments to oversee all areas of technology. And in 2016, we're proposing moving $52,000 from the general government admin line 21 to the IT hardware line 43. This is to be used for document imaging hardware and other hardware upgrades. In 2017, we have received a grant from LEGAP for document imaging costs. Mr. Ed Kraus, the city's volunteer CIO, can explain his vision to bring the city into compliance with normal IT and security procedures, but that's his realm, not mine.
So that would be another line that you're wanting to move the 52 out into this capital.
Right. In the past, we had money allocated in the general governmental admin line, and we would have just put the hardware in there. Money was allocated in there, but we're trying to build out an IT department, which in 17's budget, we are including a technology fee for the general fund and a court technology fee, and those monies will be transferred from the general fund to the capital fund and ultimately will support the IT department. So it's to help us segregate the monies.
And then you can build a plan.
Right, and then you can build a plan moving forward and
the year,
what needs
right.
to be done. Okay. Now back to the general fund on page 3. Hold on.
Page 3.
Page 3 shows the general fund.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Question
Yeah, sure.
on page 20. On line number 22, Police Department, Capital Project Fund, budgeted for this year was $184,000.
Right.
Then you have the proposed budget of $90,000. So you're moving $91,000 out of, $94,000 out.
Well, we were actually moving it to 2017 because we weren't doing the roof repairs and termite repairs and whatever was budgeted for.
Okay, where's the other $90,000 being spent?
We're just moving it to 17. We didn't reallocate it to other departments.
$184,000 listing in the 2016.
Oh, you're asking what the 90,000 was spent? I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you asked. Hold on. Let's see if I can pull it up.
Is that for the police force? Is that for money
Oh, that may very well be. And yeah, and that's not booked yet. Yeah, you're right, good memory. That's the police cars and the money from Jefferson Parish. That, right.
So we're assuming that his proposed budget, I have to look at 17, will go back to the 184? Or are you taking, you only budgeting 90, the 94 for 2017?
I got 17 with me.
Okay.
Hold on, I can't remember everything. I do try. Yes, for 2017 on the capital project, the police line, the budget that I proposed was 94,159.
And that is for,
She said
She
use the
said, can you
mic.
use the mic?
Use the
Miss
mic.
Judy asked if you can use the mic.
and that is gonna be used for,
Well, that's going to be a joint decision. You've got priorities. You've got problems with your walls and termites and different things, correct?
well, we mentioned earlier this year that we have a termite problem in the building. We had estimates we submitted to City Hall, and he said
Right.
you were waiting for a possible grant to take care of
And
the
it
whole.
didn't happen, and with the DEQ loan, it was a little
So,
difficult,
we
so.
will pay a pro rata share of treating City Hall. They can't spot treat just.
No,
our
we'll,
department. We all-
that's something that we'll just have to,
Okay.
like I told you privately and to bring everybody, that we'll just have to figure out and say, what's the equitable way to do that, that's
Okay.
all.
All right.
And, you know, we've got to get new estimates, and whenever, we've got to always, I don't mean to speak for you, Linda, that
okay.
the budget is something that we're going to be working on together through the year and adjusting as we go.
And Chief, one quick question. On that capital projects line, do you know what your budget was for 15 in the previous years? Were you around that 90, or were you at the,
I
is the
gave it a
184 just because?
1,014.
Okay,
And I wasn't aware of any capital money for the department. The money that we've received has been through grants or monies from the parish that they've given us.
so 2015 would have been the first year that y'all were given money for capital.
Yes, I agree. 13 and 14,
Yeah.
there was
I
nothing.
came in
Okay.
May of 14.
Right.
15, he got 59,473, although I don't know what that's for without looking into it.
Probably a little more than that. Councilman Johnson gave me 60,000 for 2 vehicles in 2015. The vehicles run basically 30,000.
Okay.
The base price is a little less than that, but to
That must
equip
be
them, such as the decals, the cage, the siren,
Adds
the
up.
blue lights.
Sure.
We buy them, install them ourselves to cut back on expenses. The expense to install all the equipment is about $2,500,
Okay.
so we do it in-house to save.
Lynn?
Hold on, I lost my place.
Give me one page.
Okay.
So we're back on page
Okay,
3.
back on page 3, general fund. This shows the general fund as an overall snapshot. Line 32 projects the total revenues to be less than the original budget by $250,000. This is offset by an increase of $311,000 of transferred monies in on line 70. The bulk of this is due to the closing of the sinking in the reserve fund since the city paid off and refinanced those 2 bonds. Total expenditures on line 53 projects a decrease in expenses of $173,000, which is slightly offset by $6,000 transfers out, which is line 79. The net result is on line 81, which projects a decrease, original net income was projected to be at $71,065, and the projected net income is now $298,624. This results in our new projected ending fund balance of positive $517 as of this afternoon. Please keep in mind that this budget, which is subject to change and is dependent upon all of these proposed amendments being adopted, not fully reflected in this budget are total collections regarding yesterday's property tax sale or projected auction proceeds, which we are thinking is going to be about $15,000.
Minimum.
Linda, can I
Minimum.
ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you just say that the ending fund balance is 500 and something thousand? 'Cause-
No.
No.
I misheard you, I'm sorry.
Ending fund balance is
Oh, here,
Yeah.
okay, I see, I'm sorry.
And then I've got details for the different departments, at least on the big lines. I didn't go for every 1,000
So
or
what we
500.
did in a lot of the, if it wasn't spent, moving it from, at this point, if we're not, we're trying to project through year end and come up with a decent number, and if we don't think we're gonna use it, we're trying to put it back toward the deficit, is what we looked at on all the line items. But that's how come, if we came in under, that's how we were able to change the projection. Was supposed to be at the end of this year, a deficit of what, Linda?
Oh, 68,000 was, I think,
$68,000, and now maybe 517 to the good. So,
It's gonna be right around zero. It's not gonna land right on, but it's gonna be right there. Page 5. There's a decrease in the general fund revenues, like I just mentioned. Line 3, the real estate taxes, we overestimated by 50,000 the growth of additional real estate taxes to be taken in this year. The bulk of the remaining revenue decrease is due to line 32, miscellaneous revenues. It was overestimated by 160,000. I had just walked into this position and was facing a late budget on accounts which needed to be investigated and analyzed. I had taken 2015's miscellaneous revenue number, subtracted the BP monies, and kept the difference as the projected 2016 earnings. This is a reasonable approach and it should have worked. However, since then, I've discovered that in 2015 and in 14 and in 13, and I went back to 12, the miscellaneous revenue was overstated as there was deposits coded here rather than to specific line items elsewhere in departments where they belonged. So this resulted in an overestimate of the 2016 miscellaneous revenue. Non-departmental, line 45, insurance expense. Insurance expense changed for every department. If you guys remember, the original budget was based upon the audit firm's methodology of allocating the expenses based upon each department's percentage of the total expenses of running the city. During the 2015 audit, I said that didn't make sense. We have actual policies, and I allocated the expense out based upon these actual insurance policies. The proposed figures in this amendment reflect the actual policies, not the estimate that I had originally used. So I'm not going to go over the insurance on every budget because it's the same methodology. Some departments went up, some departments went down. But now the fire
but the
department,
revenue is now there.
right? But the fire department is now paying for his fire trucks. No one else is paying for a percentage, et cetera. And before, that wasn't how it was allocated. Line 54.
But the one that was surprising, what we discovered was the expense of this on recreation. The tractor liability is very expensive.
Really?
Yes. So it was something to take note. So each policy really got addressed.
Okay, Carrie just said line 52,
Well,
she
52
was
is
the
same thing with
engineering fees, right?
engineering. I noticed it on this one and then back in the sewer fund. So
Right.
it's 36 on that one plus another 13 here. So that's like 49.
Well,
This is engineering. This is,
that's Stewart Enterprises.
and they've overspent already according to this. We budgeted 22 and they've already spent 35, or that's what you're projecting them to finish out?
That is what I'm projecting
in
them to
2016.
finish out. Line 54, accounting services increasing by 47,000. This is the line item for my services. The amount of time spent working this year has been phenomenal and unforeseen. This is the estimate of the time that was spent on these unforeseen situations. To begin with, 95 hours was spent preparing the original 2016 budget. This budget was prepared by both Robert Hines and then Don Wheat and had been paid for by the city in 2015 when the budget should have been passed. Also, excluding normal audit work, the external auditors caused 250 hours to be spent by my firm as they required items that had never previously balanced under prior audits now had to be tracked down and reconciled all the way back to 2012. This doesn't even recognize the extra hours spent unnecessarily by city employees and officials who helped track items down and check the auditor's work, which was continually riddled with errors. Another 70 hours was spent understanding, preparing exhibits for, and multiple meetings which surrounded the DEQ loan covenant and requirements, all of which should have been addressed and met in 2014 and not needed now. My position as financial advisor to the city is what is called a controller in the corporate world. Almost every transaction passes through my desk, and I know that every CPA which has held this position before me has said that the original budget of $48,000 was too low. I am charging the city at a vastly discounted rate, and I do services for free, including the most recently preparing the RFP for audit services, which took me 40 hours.
So Linda, with all due respect, I do have a question.
Mhm.
That's almost 100% than what was over, than what we budgeted.
Right.
So if the pay is 48,000 a year, it's whether you work an hour or you work,
That is not the signed contract, it's an hourly rate.
well, but we budgeted 48. So if your rate, it's kind of, I think we discussed this before, if your rate's $100 an hour, I know it depended on whether it was you or Jimmy that did the work, the rate was different on who did the work. If you pay somebody 48,000 and their rate is $100 an hour, then it breaks down to a minimum of so many hours a week. I don't understand, if it's budgeted for this, I mean, you're projecting $95,000. That's a 47,000% increase. I mean, it's just like, you're just billing the city, and then, I guess
Well,
who
the
polices
work-
the police? I mean, if your pay is this and if the city only has $48,000 to pay you, then why isn't it budgeted to be within that amount?
Well, I did tell you guys at the very first meeting that that was too low and that we'd already blown it with the first original round of budget, let alone the day-to-day operations and the work and all of these special projects.
I know, but
and
we
the
can't even
audit.
pay our fire and police.
Well, I'm sorry about that,
Well,
but
But at the end of the day, that stops with me, and in order to get city finances done and get the city running, that's why we're bringing a budget amendment to the council.
if we don't have the budget amendments, if we don't have the budget put together, if the checks aren't going into the right departments, if the revenues aren't being tracked properly, people are losing the revenues, it all ties together. I mean, it's a very key function.
I get it, but it's almost, I just feel like, well, why do we allot amount if it's gonna just be overspent anyway? If we say X amount of dollars, and
But
then.
there are also lines that get underspent.
Well,
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And there's
I
extenuating
understand that, 'cause
circumstances.
I looked at some of the lines, and I kind of knew that was what was gonna be said. Well, I didn't spend any here, so overall as a whole, I'm still within my 5% tolerance. But that goes back to, is this a line item budget or is it a general budget? Because I feel this is, and I've talked to several council members about this, because I'm still understanding this. But if it's line itemed and it's 48,000, then the way I'm looking at it is, you do not spend 48,000. If you overspend, now granted, we can choose not to amend this budget, and that's just gonna cause you to be overspent. And then where's the city gonna find the money to pay you for the hours, which I'm assuming you've already been paid year to date where you're at now, which I'm sure has exceeded the 48.
Right?
So that's what I guess I'm trying to get at. Why do we implement a budget amount if it's not gonna be, and I understand where it falls.
Well, Carrie, what's the alternative? Should she just stop doing the work?
No, Sue, think about it. If you hire an employee and you pay them $48,000 a year, which breaks to $4,000 a month, if you are at an hourly rate, if it breaks down, and I understand you initially came into a lot, and I'm sure a lot of your hours were billable probably from day one. But it's kind of like, here's my credit card, daughter, go to the mall, you can only spend $500, and you come back with a $5,000 bill. Well, I gave you a budget to live within the means, I just don't understand, and I mean, it's a drastic amount, you're talking almost double what we have budgeted, that's all.
Well,
And it's-
Carrie, what?
I don't think I'm the only council member that is questioning this, but go-
We totally, I agree with you,
Okay,
Carrie,
go ahead.
absolutely.
So you hire an employee, and she's supposed to work 40 hours a week, and, that's what you have budgeted, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a lawsuit that you have to address. Do you not address it because you can't afford to pay that employee?
I
Like,
think
you
the
mean
company
overtime,
has
like the
to
employee
decide
needs
if they
overtime
can-
now to get the
Well-
extra work done.
Right, exactly. It's not a clear cut, you don't know exactly.
well, considering we're over budgeting this amount by double, I really would have thought that maybe it could have been brought to this council a lot sooner
Absolutely.
than it being projected at 95,000.
Well, I'm not gonna argue about
Okay.
that, but I can't, I just don't understand what your solution is to.
My solution is, you paid X amount of dollars, you should try to, I understand we said this is a working document. Coming to us with a projection of 95 when we budgeted 48, Stu, I'm sure you would agree this should have been brought to us before then.
I'm not arguing
Okay.
that. I'm-
And I understand what you came into, but you can understand our concern. We have fire and police that can't We can't pay
Well,
them,
we
but
had-
we're managing to find 47,000 to potentially pay you. And it looks like we've already paid you, maybe not the
So
95.
Carrie, just don't do it then?
No.
Is that what you're saying? Don't do it? Don't
This
do
was the
accounting,
same-
Don't do the budget? Don't do any of that? I don't understand what your
There's-
point is. I really don't.
Carrie, I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure the public does too.
We appreciate your sentiment. The facts on the ground are that there was an extraordinary amount of work. There is an extraordinary amount of work. The city, in fact, could probably use to hire an accountant in City Hall to assist in order to have some of the more fundamental tasks done. And that's something that hopefully we can look at in the next year in order to move toward. But we simply don't have the skill set within City Hall, the CPA, and the amount of time that's needed and required. And quite frankly, the $1.25 million deficit that we inherited was proof that the accounting was done needed some improvement. And we have done a miraculous job, all of us, in order to eradicate that deficit in a short time and start getting in the black instead of being in the red. So no matter what, it was something that was necessary. It's just like if you budget for the garbage contract for $100 and you know it's $200, it's still going to be what it is. So I think we can belabor this, but we just need to move forward.
I understand what you're saying, because back, I don't want to talk about past, but when my dad was mayor, he had a person that was here working for the city that cost a lot less than this. So,
Well, I guess it's just like back in 2011 or 12 when there was a hurricane.
Right.
And you could never have foreseen that a national disaster was going to happen, and we overspent and we created a deficit. You didn't know it was going to happen, therefore there might have been a budget, but you went over, right? Because you had to pick up debris and you had to protect the citizens. So we totally get going over a line item, but 100% for accounting?
Right.
Come on.
and plus it was a full time that they were here.
I am here full-time.
I understand that, but
I
if
originally had-
somebody was working for the
Can
city.
we move to the next line item, though? I mean, I
if
think
somebody
we're
was
just-
working for the
I don't think
city,
we don't need
it
to
would be a lot
disparage
less.
anyone. I
I'm
think
not, I'm not
Linda's-
knocking you. It's
We're not
you
disparaging
came with your
anybody.
you came
We're
with your
only doing the
rates.
job that we're here to
You
do.
came with your rates. I understand that, but if you had a person that was full time working here,
Well, I did say originally that we needed 75,000. I didn't foresee the major issue with, the
right? Well, this
DEQ,
one's
um,
95, but plus the other one that came up earlier was what, 13?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's over 100,000, 110,
Yeah,
whatever.
the DEQ was
Right.
huge too.
I'm not
And
accusing them.
did you know that was coming down the pipelines? I sure didn't.
It
Right.
should have been done in 2013. All right. can
I
we
would
move
just have to
forward?
ask, why would someone accept a job if you knew it was way over the amount you had accepted to be paid?
It was supposed to have been 2 days a week. And I
No.
Okay, I understand. Okay, thank
Can we
you.
just move forward? Thank you.
Page 6, the administrative department. Line 95, computer supplies, increased $16,000. The original budget was too low. I had used the 2015 figures of $3,000 as a starting point, not realizing that in 2015, there was a $16,000 gap grant which had paid for the city's computer equipment. Actual costs for 2013 and 14 were $24,000 and $42,000 respectively.
So it was low because they had a grant at one time.
Yeah, last year's had a grant, so when I
Okay.
looked at that, I just gave it an increase, and it wasn't, had I
So
looked at,
2017 should go back to the 6. Is that similar to what we were talking about with the chief?
well, no.
Because we budgeted 6,
We
but we
budgeted.
have spent 22.
I don't think we quite spent 22, I have to see.
Oh,
But,
okay,
I mean,
all
we
right.
we probably around
Okay.
13 maybe. But in past years, we'd spent 22, 24, and 42 for 14 and 13. 15, we only spent 3,000 because the rest of the money was moved from this line item to a LAGAP expense.
Okay.
And I didn't realize the correlation between those two. Then go to court. on page 8. Lines 2 and 3 are decreasing these revenues since the number of tickets written have declined. Line 17, training. Our original proposed budget was for $4,600 to reflect the 36-month signed contract of Thomson Reuters. The contract expires in 2018. This line item was decreased by the council in May to a figure below the signed contract, hence the difference. Line 41, salaries. Our original proposed budget was for $58,750, but was decreased by the council in May to a figure below the current salaries of the 2 persons in court. The fire department is on page 9. Revenue line items changed amongst themselves, with some coming in higher and some coming in lower than original estimates. The net result is a negligible $275. Highway street maintenance on page 10. Line 38, vehicle repairs, is decreased by $3,800 as not as much expenses is needed this year as originally anticipated. And lines 45 and 46 pretty much net together as street repairs needed $5,000 less and the drainage repairs needed $4,000 more. The police department on page 11. The major changes relate to grants. We anticipate $19,000 more to be received in various grant revenues, and the corresponding grant expenses likewise increased. Line 21, donations, increased $3,000 to reflect the generous monies received for the purchase of ballistic vests. Line 45, OSHA and the DPP test, increased $2,300 as there were more than the usual number of tests run this year. Line 46, dues, decreased $2,600 as this line item is now expected to be below budget. Line 51, lawsuits,
Can you go to 47 about insurance too? Is that, oh, that's the same
that's the
thing
same
overall.
insurance.
Okay, got it.
Yes, ma'am. Line 51, lawsuits, increased $24,000 based upon current projections of payouts on a current lawsuit. Line 72, vehicle repairs,
And
decreased.
that's
Yes.
a very, that's an
An estimate, right.
Okay, what's,
Cold. What?
okay, no, I got it.
Okay. 72, vehicle repairs, decreased $3,000 as not as much expense is needed this year as originally anticipated. Line 74, gas, decreased $8,500 as gas prices weren't as high as originally feared. Please note that there is still a cushion built into this figure. Line 93, overtime. Original pay spreadsheets prepared by the prior CPA included a cushion in the overtime account. However, based upon current projections and a better understanding of the historical figures, $13,000 will not be needed. Line 94, annual leave, decreased $42,000. No other department has a budget for this, and we were bringing this budget into line with the others, saying that if an annual leave payout is needed, it will be included in the next budget amendment. This afternoon, I discovered that tomorrow's payroll run does include an annual leave payout. Therefore, we need to change the proposed budget column to be $11,260. So the net decrease for that line is $30,740.
Can you repeat those again? 11,000,
260.
260.
and the net,
Decrease is $30,740.
In regards
Chief.
annually, I've had
Chief.
2 officers leave in the last 2 weeks.
Is that the full total of the 11,260, or is that just one?
I'm not sure the exact amount, but two just,
That was just the one.
it's just
That's
one.
just one.
But we had 2 leave in 2 weeks, but we had probably 4 this year already leave.
so what we,
You'll have to give me the names privately, and I'll
Okay.
double check where the money went.
Okay.
Should we encumber at least a certain percentage of this into the city's budget?
Yeah. It's a
Or my
liability.
department? I mean, because I have
It's a
an,
contingent liability.
I have an excessive
that's
amount of
something we
liability
wanted to
in
talk,
this.
With the
talk with the
auditors.
auditors about, because it's I think it's something
When
citywide
Robert
that
was
we have
here,
to talk about.
We discussed it and said it's a contingent liability with these annual leave, ComTom, and other
Right.
times.
I mean, I have a guy with 5,000.
Yeah.
I know.
He said
So-
a percentage of it should be put in the budget.
Yeah, wait, I'm gonna write that as a note.
So, Chief,
Right.
do you have a concern about moving that much money out of overtime and
Well,
annual?
I'm finished. I'm totally against this.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wanted to get your
Yeah.
take on it. Because,
And I'll go into that afterwards.
Okay.
Another example, I had 4 vehicles have transmission repaired this past month. It's about $1,700 a piece.
$6,800 for.
Can we warm it up again? Are you hot?
No, Carrie asked me to turn it down.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could push up a little bit.
Change
Well,
my mind.
I'm shaking.
You turn it off and then it gets hot, and then you turn it on and then it gets cold.
Right.
Yeah,
It's a little chilly, okay,
This is how
sorry.
an air conditioner's supposed to work.
This is true. Now watch, all of a sudden. Okay.
I heard you two talking, the vehicle repairs. You're currently at $22,000.
What number is that?
72, on page 11.
Currently at what?
22, almost on the nose.
Okay.
And we're budgeting for 25. I'm trying to, if this thing will scroll quicker, trying to see which, how far did it go? That includes checks cut through October 13. So what period of time were you speaking of?
The checks will probably get cut this Friday, if I had to guess. They'll be cut Friday.
How much?
$6,800 or something like that. If I'm not mistaken.
And that was for 4 vehicles?
That was 4 transmissions.
4 transmissions.
So then I would think we need that line to be,
Increase.
yeah, at least to 28,800.
For 2017? Or just for 2016?
For 2016,
28.8?
28,800.
Which is,
Just $600 to $800 difference.
So that just doesn't leave him anything if anything happens between now and the end of the year?
And you gotta buy motor oil and oil filters and
Oil,
possibly tires.
Well, unless that's what I'm saying, I
Well,
wonder if we
there's
just, if
the
we
gas
don't
and oil
change
is a
the
different
gas,
line
oil,
item.
fuel line.
Well, I mean, we go from tires like crazy. I mean, it's constant. I mean, if nothing else happens, sure, we'll be fine.
the whole goal, and Linda was going to get to this in the end, is trying to take where we are through half of October, where we know we are, and this will not be the final budget amendment. There'll be 2 more minimally for 16 that we foresee. When year end finishes in December 31st, 2016, Linda then will proceed to close out the books. There are going to be different things that can change, that payroll can be adjusted. It's a lag over into the next year. She's got to do journal entries, et cetera.
But you don't want to knowingly take away when you know that you're gonna need it.
well, actually, we were adding to that line item, we just didn't add enough to
Right.
know about today.
Right.
So what we're expecting, I'm just trying to tell you what the thinking is, that we'll then, after she closes out the year, do a budget amendment, and then when we meet with the auditors, because sometimes the auditors recommend budget amendments, and before that audit closes and it gets submitted to the legislative auditor, June 30th, we need to have another budget amendment possibly if they make changes or suggestions, because they may say, oh, well, this shouldn't be expensed here, et cetera. and
Or
we
they
might
decide
need
to do
that.
something like they did 3 years ago with the insurance, and they allocated across all the departments, then all of a sudden, all of the
Right.
departments were overspent. Well, that wasn't fair. They didn't give anybody the option to amend your budget to,
Going back to
Go
the
to that.
annual, the overtime, we run a blue light between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. And we budgeted that when we made our proposed budget for 16, it was approved. Now you're taking out
13.
13,000.
It's,
Where are you, Tim?
This is
Overtime
line
pay,
93
93.
on page 12.
I mean, I just find it hard to believe it, the year's not in, and you're already taking money out of our budget when our year's not over, and I have no idea where I'm at. I mean, I'm gonna go on that in a few minutes, but
we're looking at, we're not doing any, what we're trying to do is the same philosophy that we looked at through administration, where we strip things down to say what is going to be true year end.
well, it can't be true.
As, no, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be
The money's
perfect.
not in my budget
It's
to
not
do the
perfect.
overtime, so it's not
In
gonna
prior
happen.
years, you've only had $44,000 worth of overtime, and you had 63,000 budgeted this year. And, you know, Robert's spreadsheet had a huge miscellaneous
Right.
cushion just shoved in there.
For no
And then what
reason.
happened last year, I wound up being $55,000 over budget that I can't account for. And the year before, I'm over budget, 1,500 that I can't account for. So I have money in my budget, and you're taking it out before the year end, and I'm gonna wind up being over budget again for 16.
Chief,
It just never
is-
ends.
Isn't there also some money that's owed to fire and police for that holiday that the city had?
That's, I think, Fire and Police Civil Service is looking into that at present.
So that would, but does that need to be in your, if,
If that goes through, it's about $6,000, yes.
But that would be a budget amendment that we would take care of it once it's determined.
Well, why would it be a budget amendment if he already has it there until you move it?
Because you're projecting, you're creating, just like we did in every other
It kind of
department.
just seems like a waste of time that
No.
before the end of the year, we're already trying to cut when we don't know what's gonna happen.
This is typical budget practice, is that
Right.
we're trying to bring it in line to what we're expecting. And then, when year closes, then we make all the budget amendments again to meet it on the actuals. And then when
so
the
do we
auditor
just amend the
comes-
budget at the end? So we're gonna amend
No.
it and then amend it again?
Well, I don't trust that, because like I said last
Oh,
year, I'm
sure.
still
We don't
trying
need to
find out
amend
what
anything.
happened while I'm $55,000 over budget, and in February the 18th, I'm $70,000 under budget.
Well, yeah, that's what I don't,
Yeah. must
so
be.
we amended, or potentially amended, and then what, a month later, we're back at it again amending it? It's almost
But
like
those
maybe
are
just
not
a-
And
gonna
you're
be
also
minor
saying, though,
amendments.
that it's supposed to be I can't put my words in the order. We should have actually done this process back like in June. Mid-year would have been perfect, but other things, most of the DEQ took over my life here.
But why do a projected budget for the whole year, and the year's not even ended, and you're already taking money, robbing money out of?
Because there
our
are
different-
things that we've learned as we've gone along. Like all of a sudden, grants didn't happen that you expected, or you were thinking that you were told. Sometimes you're told that this grant's happening, and then they go, no, the state didn't get enough money. So then you've got to
And-
pull that revenue and those related expenses out. You don't just leave it in there because you're going to spend it on something else somewhere else. That's
One-
not good fiscal responsibility. You should be tracking every line item to the best of our ability.
We try to
If
track
they
every
keep
week,
going
but
up
we
and
can't
down.
get it.
But we're
It's nothing
tracking for the
personal.
first
What I'm
time in
saying is
October.
nothing personal against you or anybody else. We do a weekly, at least a weekly run, and we have no idea where we are with the police department. It's not up to date. The last thing we got was, what, I think October, July was the last.
The last
year.
monthly close that I did was through July, but
Yeah,
if
I'm
you,
just
if you,
saying,
I know,
it's-
but if
so
you
how can
run,
you-
if you run the reports, which, you know, Tracy's running, we showed her how to run the reports, it's showing you what checks were cut. They should mostly be in the right spots. If she puts them into the PO properly. The only thing that you're really missing is some salary information and health insurance, because those items sit on the balance sheet until I move them down, because I have to do giant spreadsheets by person.
We did it
And
in
then move 'em down.
2015, and it's still wound up $55,000 over budget. That's, I don't understand.
But that was in large part due to an auditing issue, right?
Yeah.
That was an auditing issue. And which the chief and I have agreed to address, but it's about timing, correct, chief? So we are,
It's still reality.
it is reality. And I will willingly publicly write a statement, do whatever, to state that it was that no flaw of your own, and there were other errors that were no flaws of our own, of our making. So
And I agree
any
that-
other further
Go ahead.
discussion on that issue, I think we should do an executive session, to be
No,
quite frank.
I agree with you saying that, you should be doing it a couple times a year, because you don't want a big dollar amounts, and I think that's what the major problem is right now. You're looking at big dollar amounts, and I understand exactly what Chief's saying is they don't even know where the pay's at right now, and it's already getting pulled away.
Being an elected chief, I'm responsible for my budget.
Right.
If I take my whole budget and ask you to put it in salaries, and I wanna move it, I don't have money for gas or oil or anything else, I can request that you all move
Right.
it. You all move the money by
Right.
ordinance, by law.
Right,
Right.
agreed,
But I'm not in favor of moving any of this.
right.
And I'll make a presentation a little later to go a little more detail into what's
Right.
happened
And
recently.
that's why, of course, we have line item budget, so you can do that, all right.
Okay, Linda?
All right. Page 13, recreation. Yeah.
We finished, police?
He said he was going to do a presentation.
Yeah, the life insurance match actually seemed to have been double on the payroll spreadsheet for all departments, since I put them back down to where they should be. If you look at last year's line amounts, it's right there with it, with the projected amount. Last year, we paid $14.93 for the police. I'm projecting $1,500 this year. Recreation, page 13, lines 40 and 42. Building and field maintenance lines decreased by 1,000 and 3,700 respectively. Costs were not as expensive as anticipated. Regulatory, page 14, lines 2, 3, 8, and 9. Total revenues are decreasing by 37,000, as the total number of licenses and permits and inspection fees collected are projected at being lower than originally budgeted.
Shocking.
Line 7, building permits is increasing by 10,000 as revenues here are higher than anticipated. Line 23, legal fees, we need 4,000 more due to increased legal matters in the regulatory department. Wages and benefits section starting on line 51. Salaries and related payroll taxes are decreasing, and the other inspector are increasing to reflect the fact that the CBO is now a contractor rather than a city employee. The electrical inspector is decreasing by 3,000 since this line item is not being used this year. The net change is an overall decrease of 18,800. The
I'm
seniors.
sorry, Linda,
Mhm.
152 on the salaries. You
Yes.
said y'all decreasing it to 73,
Yes.
and you're moving the,
The other inspector increasing to 26. Because that position's outsourced now.
that's Bobby.
That was Kevin, and now,
The CBO.
yeah, what's his name?
Brian.
Brian. Surgeon.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, you good?
well, it's not matching with the salary breakdown that was provided to me from Raymond in regulatory.
For
Just
what
wanna make
year?
sure I'm not missing anything.
What year
We
did
can go over that,
What year did he give you?
I guess.
This is 2017.
Do we have somebody extra there now? We had 73.
No, this is 17's for 17's numbers. I took 16's numbers, actual, what they are, plus.
Because it changes because of
Right.
like health insurance, et cetera.
Right, but we're talking just the salary line.
Yeah, just the
Okay.
salary line, but I took what we actually have in the system right now for 2016, if I look in the GL,
Mhm.
plus the rest of Mr. Bobby's salary for the rest of the year. And that's what's left, the 73.
And Bobby's the other inspector line.
The other inspector is Brian Sergi.
Oh, Brian, okay. Bobby's in the salary line.
Yes, Bobby and Charlene. Okay, senior center, page 16. Line 32, vehicle repairs, increased $1,200. When this budget was originally prepared, the city did not have the van that it was donated subsequently by Jefferson Parish. Line 34, building repairs, decreased by $6,950. This reflects that the AC, which we were afraid might need replacing, made it through the summer. We are going to put that amount back in for 2017. And in closing, I did meet with all department heads and talked through all of these numbers. Everybody, except for Police Chief Tim, concurred. Numbers need to go up, need to go down. Everybody felt happy about the stuff. And then in closing, the 2017 budget was much easier to develop since we'd worked through so many issues last year. And as such, the 2017 figures should be considered more reliable even, as there's a better level of predictability than in 2016, because that was our first year together. I hadn't received any questions from the council regarding either the 16 or the 17 proposal, and I appreciate being emailed directly, anything having to even remotely to be done with budget figures. Because like last year, if I have your questions, I can ensure complete answers, so we can pass the 17 budget in November, which was prescribed by the Harahan ordinance, and by the end of the year, which is required by the Local Government Budget Act. And that's all I have to say. But
Yeah, now I just want to clarify my comment earlier. I didn't mean that
Pardon?
I didn't mean that they would take over and just move the lines for you. I meant that we should do it a couple times a year, you looking over, you know, department heads looking over and adjusting as needed, but, right, I'm in agreement with you. You should be the one to control that because it was your budget that you requested and we gave to you, so.
Any further on the, and Linda, for clarity, and I please tell me if you're not prepared to speak to it. Can you explain a little bit what happened with the insurance expense across all lines, and what the auditor did, and what was expensed, not expensed, and why the chief had a problem, and we, et cetera?
Okay, in 2014,
Speaking to the thing, sorry. You've got a
Judy's going to get
gentle-
mad. In 2014, which was before me, but the auditors had decided
For
that
the first time.
overhead expenses needed to be allocated in the general fund across departments. And they said that the first one they wanted to start with was insurance allocation because it was easy. But they took the insurance allocation, they took the insurance expense that the city has paid in total, and they took all of the departments, saw how much expenses each department had, and then did a percentage of that department's expense as a total of the entire general fund's expense. And then they multiplied their department's expense percentage by the total insurance expense to derive what they said was their pro rata share of insurance expense by department. They apparently didn't tell anybody that they were doing it. They just did it as a topside entry. And then they put in the audit that most of the departments were over budget, which was not very nice. In 2015, they were coming in and was preparing to do the same thing. They actually sent me the spreadsheet to allocate it out this way, which is when I was starting to do the 2016 budget. I used that allocation methodology for 2016. We moved on with our budget, we passed it. Then when I sat down and I started going through every single line item, I thought about it and I said, the insurance, why are we doing it this way? Insurances have policies, and the policy clearly states what it's for. Fire trucks, for police vehicles or motorcycles, for City Hall building proper, for the recreation center, the gym. It says what it's for. So I put it out by departments. And the insurance for City Hall proper.
And there was no revenue accompanying.
No, there's,
at that
there's nothing to
point.
there's nothing to offset it. But all of these departments at the time, for 2015, had zero for insurance, but the general department, the non-departmental, I don't remember if we were in 110 or 111, but the non-departmental section had the entire amount of $100-something thousand. So that side looks good, and the other departments looked bad because no one was talked to about it, no budget amendments were allowed, etc. So when I did the 2015 budget, actual year-end entries, I allocated based on policies like I just said. We did bring it to you guys and ask for an amendment. That way, at least the departments wouldn't get dinged for being overspent by that line item. Now, if there was overspent in another line item, you know, that's fine. But not in that line item, because that wasn't fair to them. They didn't have any allocation. They had nothing to do with that. It was not passed. So we had, I believe it was the Recreation Department and the Police Department, and I think there was a third one, that was overspent significantly by that. Had we not had, if we had passed the amendment to have the insurance allocated out, I know Recreation wouldn't have been overspent. The Police Department would have been overspent, but not by the amount stated in the budget, in the audit.
They had us tagged for $70,000 in liability insurance. The amendment that was submitted that wasn't
I think it was
passed by the
55.
council was $30,000. So there's still a $40,000 difference. That's one. My next question is, the revenue was there. What happened to the revenue? Who got the revenue?
There's no revenue
There was
within
money to
expense.
pay the insurance. The insurance got paid, correct?
Yes,
You're talking
but
about
there's
prior
no,
years.
no,
that year,
for 15.
The liability insurance was paid. So where was the revenue at?
But that's what the amendment was going to do, is allocate the money
I
that was
understand that part.
needed.
But there is not a matching revenue. If you have an expense, any of these expenses don't have a
You're not
matching
following my
revenue.
question. The police department was tagged with $70,000 in liability insurance. The proposed ordinance that was put up was only going to take care of $30,000. But the total liability insurance for the city was paid. The money was there, correct? The city paid the liability insurance.
Isn't this what happened because tell me if I'm right, I'm trying to
So
remember
What
everything.
you're saying is that they didn't
Post-
move over the
They didn't
full
move the revenue.
allocation
But
over
the
revenue.
auditor,
But the revenue wasn't moved over, but also.
the
General
auditor
government
was
got-
going to move it no matter what, right?
Move over
Right.
what?
The expense.
The expense, like they did in
And they can legally
14.
do that without the revenue.
We went and to
There-
the
yeah,
legislative
We did ask
auditor.
legislative auditor, but there isn't a revenue to go with it. It's,
There was revenue to go with it. The city allocated money to pay, was the liability insurance paid to the company, the insurance company?
with
By
cash in the bank
allocating
account.
it wouldn't have gone against your bottom line. It's
I'm
not like,
saying the money was there. The insurance company got paid.
Yeah, it was
the
always
premium.
paid out of general fund revenue.
Right.
but what we're saying is with
So
that
that revenue should go to
budget
the department
amendment.
to cover that, to
Right,
cover
but with
the,
that budget amendment,
difference.
the
Still
allocation would
wouldn't
have been made.
covered what
No.
we would charge. We would charge
No, you would
70,000.
char-
We would have-
The amendment was 30,000.
If that budget amendment would have been passed, you would no longer have been charged the auditor's rate because they agreed to change the methodology if that amendment was changed, if it was passed. With that amendment not being passed, they went ahead and used their methodology. So that's what they did. They were going to make that entry no matter what. We, Linda, looking at each policy, would have significantly brought that down. So it's not like 70-something thousand minus the 36. It's more that, correct? It's that the allocation would have moved over at a better rate
Right.
than what they were suggesting.
I
So,
understand. I'm just saying,
And,
the
well,
money was in general fund. So on paper, the city general fund kept it, with 200, whatever it was total for liability. They kept it as revenue.
no.
The departments were charged.
No, it was an expenditure.
Yeah,
The
there's
the
no
departments were charged
revenue.
the expenditure. The revenue stayed in general fund on paper.
What revenue?
You understand what I'm
No.
saying?
I'm following it.
You follow me?
There was no revenue.
There's no revenue.
There was revenue to pay the policy. The policy.
There were,
There's
I guess,
revenue
there
to
were
pay
funds
the
allocated
policy.
to pay it.
Yes,
Correct.
it was a
And
line
that-
item budget
That
item
didn't go with the
that was
expense
in.
of the
So
department, is all he's
they
trying to
expense
say.
it out, but didn't credit you the funds to allocate to pay for it.
So that's what we were
Right,
trying
right, which
to
is what
do.
the budget amendment
Right.
came forward with.
So you're talking about, Tim,
right.
you're
So-
talking about the 40,000?
So if the budget,
The whole 70?
but had the budget amendment, say we would have made the budget amendment,
Yep.
no longer postal weight 70, how much was it?
70,000.
70,000 would have been
Overspent.
overspent.
It would have been 50.
It would have been 36 would have only been allocated to you.
With the revenue.
Right, all that would have, it would have washed, okay?
That's not what I'm talking about.
Well, you're, s-
What he's saying is that the expense came to him, but not the revenue.
The revenue
Right.
stays in general.
But the
fund.
way that it got allocated with the budget
So
amendment,
like
it
you
would
overspent.
have, correct?
I'm overspent 55,000,
Wait,
but
did-
general fund is up 70,000.
But did you hear that, though?
Well, I did bring forth the budget amendment to fix that problem.
Because it would have fixed
And-
it.
It was not passed.
It wasn't
And I asked
seconded.
you to please say that this affects the police
Oh
department.
my God, it's our
And you did
fault.
not say a thing.
Can't take it.
And the other problem that he is having, and
I have several.
it's on the budget with last year and the auditor, they put in the report the wrong budgeted amounts. I don't remember the
They
dollar
did it
amounts.
to everyone.
Yes, to everybody. They put in, they said, as Department X has got, 1.8 million, but it was a 1.9 million. So if you're comparing what was spent to the wrong beginning budget amount, everybody's number is out of whack.
So there is an issue.
Yes.
And
we're
that we
and
will
we're-
be
We're trying to
handling
handle that.
So the administration got dinged, recreation got dinged, every department, every fund got dinged. And not only that, because their top number was wrong, it made the bottom numbers for everyone
Be wrong.
be wrong. And we've started discussions, and any further than that, we should take it into executive session, I would think, okay? Okay. Does anybody have any other
Yes, I do.
questions? It's freezing.
Get a little chilly.
Huh?
It's actually a little chilly.
It's chilly.
Told you.
I feel it over here, so I know y'all must be freezing. Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
What I'm about to say is not personal against anyone. I'm the elected police chief of the city of Harahan, and I am responsible for the Harahan Police Department, which I take very, very serious, and I'm responsible for the Harahan Police Department budget. I've been here since 1976. I'm not going to read everything on that's in this 3 or 4 pages, but several things have happened recently that I'm not really happy about. We live here. We all live here because it's a safe city. That's one of the main drawing cards. It's a safe city. It's been a safe city before I came here in '76, and hopefully it'll be a safe city after I leave. But I'm going to do everything I can to keep the police department in total operation. And my number one concern is my officers' safety. That's paramount, nothing else. Everything else is secondary. When I came in 2014 in May, doing an assessment of the overall department, we had 4 or 5 more police officers prior to 2014. I don't know what happened, why those officers left, whether they resigned, fired, retired, or whatever, but they weren't replaced. My compliment right now, I am short 2 officers. I've got 1 in the academy. I had 2 leave in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We were fortunate enough to hire 2 experienced officers that were post-certified, meaning that they went right to the street. And I've got 1 of my supervisors just got injured off duty, so he's gonna probably be out for a month with an operation. I work very, very hard with my staff. Captain Adams was in charge of operations, Sergeant Gleber's in charge of the detectives and the 4 patrol sergeants. Captain Leo Savoy is in charge of our reserve section, and my secretary, Miss Tracy Whittle. And we work very hard on a daily basis going over day-to-day operations, and we work extremely hard putting together a balanced budget. And I'm very serious about keeping the budget within balance each year. I've got a problem going back to 14, but that's minor. I've got a major problem in regards to 15. I'm $55,000 over, which I can't get the information from. I've sent the mayor a letter, I think you might have got a copy of it, by Freedom of Information Act, that I want the information what Postwait Nettleville used to do their budget, and I can't get it. They had to use some figures to make my budget, or the police department's budget, $55,000 over. I don't understand, end of the year, December of 15, I'm $200,000 under budget. Then we do a run, done runs during that period, but in February of 16, I'm still 70-something thousand dollars to the good. And then when the audit comes out, I'm $55,000 over budget. I'm just trying to find an explanation. And to try to put together, I didn't put together a 2017 budget. We met with, this past week, I had an operation week before last, so I've been out about 4 days. But we met with Ms. Lulu, we met with Mr. Ed Kraus, Sergeant Gleber, Captain Savoy, Ms. Whittle, and myself. We met for 4 hours at City Hall going over this 2016 budget. I'm trying to get an idea where I'm at so I can do a proposed 17 budget. One of my questions I asked Ms. Lulu during that time period is any monies from the Harahan Police Department 2016 going to be taken out of this budget? The answer was no. Get this material a couple of days later, and yes, monies have been taken out of my budget, to my objection. Like I said, our equipment is old, but I'm more concerned about our personnel. I need 2 police officers. I need 2 police officers today. It's, you know, I hate to admit publicly, I've got 1 officer in uniform on the street right now, well, during the day. We've got some other backup with the detectives and other staff personnel, but it's not safe, trust me. We're very fortunate the Sheriff's Office and the Levy District assist us on calls when need be, but
Chief, can I ask you a question?
sure.
How many do you have right now, total?
Commissioned,
Yeah, including your two.
include myself, 19. But you remember, I don't go on the street, Captain Adams doesn't go on the street, and Sergeant Gleber goes on the street occasionally. He's over 4 patrol sergeants. We all wear multiple hats. I know everybody in city
I'm
government,
trying to figure out,
everybody in city government is shorthanded. I'm well aware of that. But these men and women out there put their life on their line every time they stop a car and they go on a call. They don't know what they're up to or what they're going to come across. We've had some incidents. Even at Little Mayberry and Sleepy Harahan, we've had several occasions in the last year that I think our officers used extreme restraint, and also no one got hurt and they didn't get hurt, thank God. Our equipment is old, most of our vehicles, it wouldn't be for Councilman Johnson, the last, 8 vehicles the city has received has been as a generous donation from the parish. I've got 3 waiting to come in right now. We got 2 last year, and the prior administration, to me, coming in, got 3. Our cars
So
have
19 minus 3, you have 16 commissioned
Well, that's-
officers for 7 days a week,
Well, that's not, you
24/7.
take out the 2 detectives.
Yeah.
2 detectives, too.
So 14.
Yeah, for 4 shifts. And they
And you have
work
vacation, and you have sick, and you
vacation,
have
sick,
things that happen in
right,
life.
comp time. Yes.
And we, I know you said you didn't want to share that, but we have 1
Yesterday, last couple of
officer
days this
on-
week,
on
we've
the
had
street.
1 uniform officer on the street, yes. Yeah,
That's pretty scary.
yeah. It's not a safe environment. I would request that you read it. Like I said, we spent 4 hours with Ms. Lulu, and she was very gracious in working with us. And before I left that meeting, I asked her if any of the monies from this budget, 2016, was going to be taken out of our budget. Her answer was no. When we get paperwork a couple of days later from the administration, monies were changed.
Well, Chief, I won't approve any money to
Pardon?
be taken out of your budget.
So
I will never approve money to be taken out of your budget.
You know, the other thing we're paying for is our pro rata share. I pay 35% of the mayor's salary. I pay 50% of the HR salary. I mean, to me, these are city services that, why, that's not true, Mayor? I see you
I'll
shaking
let-
your head.
Tim, I'm going to defer to Linda to explain the allocation of overhead.
Well, at $57,000 that comes out of my budget to pay payroll for city hall expenses is almost an extra police officer. You know, I say this in jest, but it's almost a point to where we use the streets 24 hours a day. Do I pay part of street maintenance? And we work at nighttime, do we pay part of street lights?
Right.
Where does it stop? I mean, my budget keeps going up on numbers. You look like I'm making, but we're taking in $2 million, but the bottom line is we don't have any additional funding coming to us. We have additional expenses, but we don't have additional funding. That's the problem. Our neighboring area, and I hate to say I grew up in New Orleans or a Dark North Police Department, when you have an armed robbery, 3 hours for a police officer to respond. If we don't respond to a barking dog in 3 to 5 minutes, I'm getting a phone call. It's something we just accustomed to. We do more here than any other. I'm not knocking any other department, but we have the resources to where if you tell me we change the light bulbs in the houses of the infirmed and the elderly, I think we do it. There's not much we don't do. When you say we had 2 detectives, we follow up on every crime that's reported. We recover stolen bicycles, make arrest on it. That's unheard of in most areas. Again, I'm not knocking any other department. They don't have the resources. We do. But we don't let anything go unturned. Are we perfect? No. We have room for growth? Yes. But again, my concern is our officers' safety, period. No ifs, ands, and buts. I need 2 police officers to be put on the street. And if it wouldn't be, again, for Councilman Johnson giving me money for firearms this past year, buying 3 cars that are in the process of coming in, and some ammunition for duty use and training, I would really be under weather. So, again, this is nothing personal against anybody. It's just the reality of it.
So Chief, can I ask you another
Sure.
question? So if you get the 2 new additional officers,
They will go on the street.
and I know in the past, before you came, I believe, there was an officer that would work Monday through Friday, strictly traffic.
We have one officer that just went through motorcycle training. We have a couple of motorcycles. His supervisor is the one that just got injured off duty. So we have to do some kind of realignment with personnel. Traffic, I know what's going on. I've been seeing all the emails and the correspondence about red flags with the speed camera. Speeding, traffic is my biggest problem in this city, and it's throughout the city. I did the study. Y'all got a copy of the study that was done like 6, 7 months ago. We have 3 major thoroughfares in the city: Jefferson Highway, River Road, and Hickory. And we have traffic 24 hours a day. I think in that study, on a 12-hour period just during the day, there's over 7,000 vehicles on Hickory and about 7,400 vehicles on Jefferson Highway. You've got people, you have no idea who they are, coming through the city. We stop them occasionally for traffic violations. If you look at what we put on Facebook, 70% of people we arrest are wanted on attachments or a warrant.
And Chief, I think that study that we all were able to see from Red Flex, it was like 20 or 25% of the cars on those major thoroughfares for that study were speeding. They were going
Major
over the
speeding.
speed
It
limit.
wasn't just 2, 3, 5
Yeah.
miles over
It
the
was
speed limit. It was like 10 miles
20-25%.
over the limit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So Chief, back to my question.
Okay.
Are you gonna, is that one of the things that you would do when you get the number of
We could
officers?
look at putting one officer on each shift to be dedicated to traffic enforcement, as long as we got the people on the street.
Is that on par with like in the past years, or would
From
that
Monday
still
through
be?
Friday? No.
No, it'd be during a shift. It would be during a shift.
So, okay, so that would be going back to what, when was the last time that was done? 2012,
2013, I think, is
2013?
when we had our last traffic guy, that was Monday through Friday. That would require 3 more officers, because the 2 officers would fill the shift shortage that we have right now. And then the 3rd officer could be dedicated to traffic Monday through Friday.
And then going back to our conversation with Ms. Wu on the 7th, we spent 4 hours with her. Whatever she charges per hour, I'm gonna be charged for. So when I left that meeting, we left assured that what we discussed was gonna be etched in stone, only to find out later that 4 or 5 of my personnel, including myself, that has changed. But I will get a bill for that time that we spent. Yeah. And I get billed when I talk to Mr. Burris also for legal matters. So. Pardon? Thank you. And it's quite a few. I mean, as I said before, our city ordinances are so outdated, it's unbelievable. Our alcoholic beverage law goes back to 1970. We just ran into some problems with one of the major stores here wanting to sell retail, and we're trying to work that out. But 1970, it's way past due to be updated, along with the other ordinances. The one I've sent to all of y'all since I've been in office dealing with animal control, that is so outdated, it's unreal. And the problem with the parish not handling it, the Jefferson Parish, they will pick an animal up that bites somebody, and they assist us on occasion, but they can't process it as far as an offense because they have an administrative hearing. They don't take it to first parish court. If they issue them a citation or arrested them and put them in jail, and the court charges went to first parish court, that'd be fine. But they do it as an administrative hearing, and they can't do it as an administrative hearing because it's in Harahan. That's one of the problems we run into. So,
I have one more question.
Sure.
So I can't remember the exact name of the site, I just remember the initials UCR. I think it's run by the FBI maybe, where municipalities provide their crime statistics and their numbers of officers. And when you all provide that information as in terms of the number of police officers that you have, is that actual patrol officers, or does that also include your detectives?
It's gonna include everybody.
That's everybody.
And then I give you all a monthly report, and I give you a yearly report on all activities that we've done. I know you gave me a request the other day, if you want me, I can bring it out. I don't have the time and the resources to answer all those questions. The bottom line to your request, officer safety, period. That's what it's all about.
I understand that, but my question is, of that number that is given to that UCR,
Mhm.
is that everybody, is that your clerical, is that? or-
If it says,
It says police officers.
if it says commission police, it's all 19 of us,
Okay.
Plus your additional,
reserves.
No, it wouldn't have, no.
Well, I'm
no.
saying, our commission personnel, full-time. It's
And
19
that's
counting
another
myself.
question I'd like to ask too,
Sure.
is, as far as reserves, do we use the reserves?
Do we use the reserves? Yes. You attend at Night Out Against Crime this past week?
No.
The majority of reserves put that on. We got Halloween coming up in a few weeks. They conduct that whole area from Brighton to West Imperial, from Stoneleigh to Dosha. Every corner is responded by 2 reserve officers on their own time. You remember, these men and women that are reserve officers, the only thing we provide them, a uniform, some training, and a firearm. They devote all their time. Most of them have full-time jobs like the rest of us, so I can't expect them to be out there every day. I have a few that do come during the week because they work shift work, but primarily we use them on special events. They got the Pecan Festival coming up at St. Rita. We got the Harahan Christmas Parade coming up. Again, we got Halloween night. They'll be out for that. And they come out during the week and weekend from time to time and assist us. There hasn't been one thing that I haven't asked the Reserve Command to assist us with that they have not done. And we're very grateful for them. There's about 27, 28 of them, and these people dedicate their time to us as needed. And they put their life on the line just like our regular officers do. They perform the same functions as our regular officers.
And they're also,
With no pay,
they
right?
also have 3 reserves that work court every Tuesday night for free,
Yeah,
With no pay.
with no pay.
no pay, correct.
And they cross people every Saturday and Sunday.
And then going back to pay our officers, and I'm sure the rest of the city hall, rest of the city employees, they made a pay raise, I think, just 2010. Like I said, I just lost 2 officers. One went to the sheriff's office, one went to the levy district. The sheriff's office just had, I think, a 7.5% pay raise in July, and I understand they get another pay raise in January. So I'll probably lose a few
No
more.
officers have had raises since 2010.
Nobody has that I know of. I don't think anybody in the city's had a pay raise since
The
then.
only way somebody got a raise in our department is if they got promoted, which might have been one person got promoted to sergeant, and got
Yeah.
sergeant's pay. That was it.
It's been 10 years.
Like I said-
Fire department.
Yeah. Like I said, Sheriff's Office just did a 7.5% pay raise in July for their commissioned personnel, and I understand all the employees are getting another pay raise in January. So I'll probably lose a few more officers before the end of the year. I mean, we train them, we send them to academy. It's, basically, 90 days. We pay in their expenses while they're in the academy. They stay with us a year or two, get some street experience. These other departments will snap them up in a heartbeat because they're ready to roll. They've got experience and they got their post-training. It's a vicious cycle. This has been going on since the day of Tom and Harry, and this is nothing new. Okay. Yeah.
any further comments?
Thank you.
Yeah. Linda?
I got a couple of responses to Chief Tim, which I mean, like you
What?
said, I have a couple responses or answers to you. Like you said, nothing's personal. It's all numbers, and I hope you know that I like you. I generally do like you. I do.
Like everybody, I'm not mad at anyone. It's just the reality of it. It's something, it's a service we perform. Their safety is my number one concern.
And I
mean,
agree.
Our basic officer makes a little less than $35,000 a year base pay. By the time they take the deducts out, payroll expenses, some of these men and women are taking home less than $600 every 2 weeks. If they got a year on a job and they post-certified, which they are, they get an extra $500. How do they live on $1,800 a month? I don't know how they do it. Our overtime is limited, and y'all just said you don't want to take some of the overtime away, and our details are limited. Well, luckily, we just picked up a bank detail, which is 5 days a week, so they're rotating that around to pick up a couple extra dollars. But when you get other agencies are giving pay raises 7.5% plus, it's hard to retain.
When we met, I think the 7th,
Mhm.
we'd gone through, all of us,
Correct.
sat there, and we went through line by line, and we went up and we went down on
Correct.
multiple items.
Correct.
And at the end of the day, there actually was a decrease. I think it was about $30,000. I didn't tell you guys, I didn't tell any department that you weren't losing money or that it was being kept within the department. All of us are operating from one giant purse.
No, I specifically asked you, and at the end of that meeting, you can ask Mr. Kraus, Sergeant Gleben, Ms. Riddle, Captain Savoy, are any of the money from the Harahan Police Department 2016 budget being removed out of our budget? And your answer was no.
That was not the purpose of the meeting, that's not what I
It's
said.
not, and I'm talking the purpose, it was the question, and you said, no, it wasn't. It wasn't being removed.
And I did not promise anybody that the numbers that we talked about was going to stay.
I specifically asked you.
You did
yes
ask
or
that,
no.
and
what was your answer?
Mr. Kraus and I both said that we were not the final boss in the
No,
matter, it
no,
is
you
the
didn't
mayor's
say
budget.
that.
Yes, we
I
did.
asked simple question, yes or no, and your answer was no.
I said I would present your numbers, which is what I did for everybody. I presented everybody's numbers to the mayor.
Okay.
Your overhead allocation for the salaries. That also came about because of the auditors. They had said they were starting with the insurance and allocating it out. They wanted us to do for 2016, allocating overhead salaries, just like other businesses, just like other governments. And we worked through a methodology, allocating people's salaries out based upon the functions. The people in charge of collecting the revenue, their salaries went out to the different departments for where the revenue is coming in from or generated from. The people who are handling the accounts payable, the salaries went out based upon the percentage of expenses by the departments. HR was broken out by the number of employees by the department, and then the top level overhead, I believe, was the mayor, and I think the administrative assistant was in that. I wouldn't want to swear to that. So we allocated that out to everybody. We talked about that in the 2016 budget. It is on everybody's line item for 16, and I've carried that same methodology. Didn't change any because no one's getting pay raises for 2017. You equivalating that to getting another officer isn't a true or a fair equivalation because it's all one purse string. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things if 100% of it all sits in Department A or if it gets divided up amongst Departments A through Z. It's still the same amount of money,
When you
and
look at
those
the bottom
salaries
line,
are
at the
getting
end of the
paid.
year, I'm charged $57,000 revenue that's put in my department. It's a wash that goes out to pay part of the mayor's salary, part of HR salary, and several other employees at City Hall. If that $57,000 was in there, I could add a few dollars. A basic police officer, I think you said, is right at $60,000 with the deductions.
Well, prior to
Payroll expense.
2017, we didn't even have an extra $1,000 to give anybody anything. And we are giving you, both of you gentlemen, officer and a fireman next year. It's the first year that we were able to do that, and we worked hard to scrape our money together. We pulled ourselves up our bootstraps, and all the departments have fought hard to save money where they can.
Okay, thank you.
And no other department has any benefit like that, has an increase in personnel or anything?
No one's increasing.
Well, these two departments are first responders. When people call for police, fire, or EMS.
I respect
they
that,
expect They
yes.
expect us
Yes.
to be there right then and there, not an
I
hour
respect
later or a day later.
I agree.
Any other, oh, Tim, people need to say that so we can take a break. Any further questions? Can we adjourn until
Yeah, that's what I was about to
7:30?
say. We better adjourn to.
Okay, do I have a motion to
Motion.
adjourn?
Motion.
I have a motion by Carrie Wheeler, seconded by
Second.
Councilman Johnson.
Yep.
We're adjourned until 7:30 to begin the regular city council meeting.
Don't you have to call
Oh, I think we're all in favor. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? We have are you in favor of adjourning this? Okay. We have 5 yeas, 0 nays. We're adjourned.